So, Rabbi Rakeffet, so my father, as you know, he graduated Westchester Hebrew Day School June 1954. He enters MTA September 1954. He was in the same class as Rav Herschel Schechter. He should be living me well. And in Rav Moshe Tendler's shir. And Rav Moshe Tendler did a very unusual thing. He encouraged my father to leave MTA and go to TELS, which my father has mixed feelings about. You know, he felt on one hand he learned, in Litvish Yeshiva for a number of years and graduated. But then he came back, went to Chavetz Chaim for a couple of years, and he came back, I believe, around September 1959.
He graduated Yeshiva College 63.
There you go. So tell me, when did you first meet him? And and it was a big yeshiva. Why'd you hang out with him?
No, here's the story. YU at the time was smaller than today. Mm-hmm. It had one tremendous advantage. Everyone knew each other from entering freshman high school to smicha.
Wow.
It's one yeshiva. When I came in 51, I sought out the best guys in the yeshiva. See, Libi Chashka B'Torah. I owe this to Sempo Sugihara, Zeicher Tzadik Livracha. I have to be honest. He saved me. 7th grade in Salanta, I had a Rebbe right off the boat, Reb Geshen Yankelovich. 8th grade, I had Reb Henich Fishman. Zayam Nishgeret Avot in English. They didn't know a word of English, and I didn't know a word of Yiddish. Understand? And it changed my whole eternity. And when I came into YU, and it was a different world then. 51, the ganze Avira from the yeshivas given in Yiddish, and you could see, you come in there's Rav Zaks, the Chavetz Chaim son-in-law. There's the Mashgiach, Rav Lesson, Talmud Mulkhavg, the Alta of Slabotka. There's the Rab Chaim Briskes Aneniko. I mean, it was overwhelming. There's Rab Shmuel Belkin, the Radna Ilu. You got to know where he was coming from. And there's this Lachave that he had two titles. One was where he was born, the Ilu, and one later, Radna, where he studied the Ilu. And the Rebbeim, it was a different world. So I sought out the best guys. I'm ashamed to tell you this. In 1951, I was already a buddy of Rabbi Aaron Lichtenstein. Where do I come to Rabbi Aaron? But I sought him out. There was in the Beis Medrash Reb Gershon Sadowski. He just died recently. They recorded me. They played it at the Shleishim. No one can understand. Reb Gershon was a kid from Baltimore. His father was a musmach of the yeshiva from the 1920s.
Wow.
And his father, there was Gershon, had a younger brother, Yitzchak. But Gershon and Aaron, we called them the Babe. Aaron was known as the Babe, and Gershon was known as Gersh, the Gersh. And these guys, it's just unbelievable. They knew Kol HaTorah Kuli. Wow. We were looked up to them already. And how old were they? Aaron was at least 4 or 5 years older than me. It wasn't that we're two generations to get. And this is what I write about in Washington. This is true, that we used to have penny bets on the Babe and on the Gersh, who would learn later at night in the Beis Medrash.
Wow.
When we came in the morning, there was a janitor. He's a Scottish guy, Purvis, Charlie Purvis. Charlie! And he would say, the Gersh, 107. The Babe, 105. Follow? And so we sought them out. When your father came into the yeshiva, first of all, he was an anomaly, a kid from Westchester Day School, and Libo Chashka B'Torah. He reminded me of myself. And he sought us out. He befriended me. We were friends from day one.
Wow.
And he was part of the Chabura. I was there, Jerry Blau, Ida, Shimon Ida, later becoming Zeicher Tzadik Livracha, became very famous with Kuntrasim. Right. And Heshi Schechter was younger. Your father was younger. But this was the Chabura. There was a fellow, Ray Weinberg. He got lost in Haifa. I always say to Malka, what happened to Ray? Rafal Shlomo Weinberg. His father was principal of Soloveitchik Yeshiva. I don't know if you realize there was in Washington Heights. He was rabbi of the shul in Soloveitchik, and this was his only child, his only son. These were top quality guys. And your father, he was always searching. There was always, he didn't take anything for granted. So you just said a minute ago, he went to Tells. Later in life, your father and I came in Aliyah. We renewed our friendship. So yeah, I want to tell you, we always had arguments on two topics. What were the topics? Chabad and the Haredim. And I'm not I'm a Litvak, but I can understand Chabad.
Right.
Your father evidently had a bad experience in his years in Chinuch, because I told your father, there are two types of Chabadnikim. Those who understand there are other Torah Jews, and those who feel either you're a Chabadnik or you become a Chabadnik. That's the only way to live. So, and your father evidently ran into these people who could steamroll you, that this is it, Kazera Eva Kadesh.
Right.
So I always try to calm him down. I would tell him, Chabad, the good, and I've seen Chabad all over the world. And I have to tell you, yes, you can find one or two rotten apples,
right.
But overall, I know it when, I worked in Russia for the Mossad. Communism was amazing what Chabad had under the camera. It didn't create waves,
right.
But unbelievable. I can entertain you with stories about my encounters with Chabad in Russia, but the Ibegegebenkeit was unbelievable. Then the other topic is one that's very much in the headlines today. Your father couldn't tolerate some of the Haredi outlook.
Right.
I need not tell you that.
Not going to the army.
I need not tell you a comment that our certain chief rabbi made.
Yes.
We'll leave the country.
Right.
Idiot. You'll leave Israel. Where are you going to go?
Right.
South Africa?
Right.
New Zealand, Australia, Communist Russia. Where are you going to go?
Right.
And Nahareg Volonit Gayes. We will either be killed. What are we dealing with here? So I agree with your father 1,000,000%, but
he was a kanoi about it.
No, but you see, I learned in Lakewood. I was very close to Rabbi Aaron Rakeffet. I'm probably the only one in the world who can boast with stupidity. I actually said to Rabbi Aaron, B'nai Akiva hat the richtige hashkafa. And Rabbi Aaron, by the way, when Lakewood honored me right before Corona, my last time in America, so I was honored by Aaron Cutler, his grandson, and the whole. No, there are reasons why. I have a lot of time with them from Lakewood, and I have a feeling that I've kept some people from the Haredi world at a certain point want to leave. They're upset with certain aspects of the narrow-mindedness. And if you listen to my lectures, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Right.
So I've picked up some real devotees in Lakewood.
Beautiful.
So I'm a chutzpan. I got up and spoke, and I said, had Rabbi Aaron gone to Israel instead of America, he would have been a Pol Mizrachiite, like his father-in-law's whole family, Rabbi Zalman, who established the first Hesder yeshiva in Israel.
Wow.
Do you know or not? Rabbi Zalman's son, Rabbi Yehuda's Meltzer. The whole yeshiva Hadarom originates from Kletsk yeshiva that Rav Shach taught there.
Wow.
That's the first Hesder yeshiva. So, but because I learned in Lakewood and I can understand them, Chadash Hashem in the Torah.
Right.
We know what we have. We don't know what we're going to get. Mm-hmm. So I remember we would always dialogue on Shabbos morning after davening. Gotta go slowly. You can't do it overnight. I say, you're right, we have to influence, have to set the example, have to lead the way. but it was amazing. And
Right.
your father, who gets smicha v'nitri, if I recall correctly,
yes, correct.
and learned a shtickle zman in tells,
Yes,
and he was more adamant than me.
correct.
But that was our enjoyment. I loved your father. And your mother, the secretary from England,
Yes,
and the roommate. They're going together, and they're like America, England. How will it work? Baruch Hashem.
that's
Baruch
it. Nearly
Hashem.
60 years.
It worked out. It worked out beautifully. So this was the inner relationship.
So you met him even during the MTA year, or when he came to you?
No, I remember him, I think, from MTA already.
Wow.
Yeah, because I'm in yeshiva from 51 on.
Right. Yeah. Wow.
And it was a big thing. But you know your father's real yichus, which I would tell everyone.
Tell me what's his real yichus.
And he would laugh. Your father, I think it was your grandfather, was a little bit more wealthy than the average kid.
Yes, correct.
I mean, we were Bronx kids.
Right.
But I don't know.
He had a company. Now he was working for the family business. Yes, there was money.
So your father had a car, a college, a kid in YU in the 50s with a car, unheard of.
Right.
So then came my wedding. All right, June 14th, 1960. And that night was the Mizrahi convention. And the Rav was scheduled to be the main speaker.
One of the 5 drushes.
Could be one of the 5 drushes was that very night, because they're not dated. So the Rav said to me, I want to be Mesadeh Kedushin, but you'll have to make the wedding very early. And we called it for 6 o'clock. And, but it has to be, I said, Rebbe, 6:30 the chuppah. No if, ands, and buts. Now I needed someone to drive the Rav. The Mizrahi would pick him up from Riverside Plaza, where we got married, in the Upper West Side. But your father drove the Rav to my wedding.
Beautiful.
And I always told everyone, you see that gentleman there? If not for him, I wouldn't be married. He drove the Rav to the wedding. At the wedding, something happened, which, again, you go through life, you don't realize at the moment what's happening. But I'm sitting here because of what happened was very simple. And the world should know this. Heshi Schechter, Reb Heschel, still remembers. In that time, in those days, the Chatan spoke right after the Ketuvah was finished. With the Rav sitting there, you were not cut off. Minig olam is, and that's it. The guy spoke 3 minutes, it's finished. I spoke 22 minutes.
Wow.
When I finished, the Rav kissed me.
Wow.
Now, I write he hugged me. You know why I write that? Because later I learned his father didn't kiss him. I've given many lectures on this. He actually kissed me.
Wow.
And hugged me. No, I took for granted. And why shouldn't he kiss me? I gave it. It was his Torah.
Right.
I spoke on Mesachet Bekuvia.
Right.
And I took what we developed in the Shir and said, and I developed it a little bit further.
Nice.
But it was mamish his Torah. Okay. During Sheva Brachas, I get a message. Norman B. Abrams wants to see me. He ran
the administrator of
YU. He ran with an eye in hand.
Right, the revered and feared.
Right. And over the years, I've taught many relatives.
NBA, as he was called.
NBA, they all pop up and tell me, Rebbe, you spoke about Abrams. It's my cousin, this one, that. I said, Baruch Hashem, I'm glad to hear that Torah survives in the family. So I come into his office, and it's like yesterday, and he says, Arnold, what I saw at your wedding, I never saw anywhere. And I told Dr. Belkin, and I looked at him and said, what are you talking about? He says, the Rav kissed you. When did you see that? He was there, Abrams. And he says, Dr. Belkin and I have decided the next opening for a yeshiva, we're appointing you. 1 year later, I'm rabbi in Pennsylvania. I get a telegram, on Mivrak. Today, no one knows what a telegram is. Right. There was no email then, no fax.
Nothing.
I get a telegram from NBA, Dr. Velkin wishes to see you in his office Monday morning at 10 a.m. And this was Thursday, and it was a big thing for me to go from Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, 30th Avenue, the main Penn Station, into New York, then take the subway uptown. And I remember I brought 2 pies, kosher. There was no kosher food available. Who had a bakery that was kosher then in Pennsylvania? Remember, I brought back 2 pies from that trip from Washington Heights. And I reached Mr. Abram's office. It was about 20 to 10. And he calls Mrs. Atlas, Dr. Belkin's girl Friday, answers, Rabbi Rakeffet is here. Is Dr. Belkin available? Yes, come right in. We come in, and Rav Shmuel Belkin, ich bin euch, ich habe gehört, I can't repeat the whole conversation, but I will be writing it up because I'm working on a subjective memoir of Reb Shmuel. I already have 4 major chapters written.
Wow.
And I have a few more to go. I'll write up. And he says, ich bin euch Mamana a Rosh Yeshiva in Yeshiva Schonen und man darf trinken alle Chaim. And if he opens up his desk, pulls out a bottle of schnapps, he tells Mrs. Atlas a bissel mezainis, and we made a l'chaim, and that's when I started. That September I started, and I'm still, you should know, an interesting comment on 64 years of teaching Torah. My closest relations are with my students from the 60s.
Wow.
Why? I'll explain why. These were kids of a formative age, 14, 15. When I walked into class, I was influencing them. Some I influenced their whole life into eternity. Today, I walk into class, world famous people are sitting there, Rabbanim, Lamdanim, professors, atomic scientists. They want to influence me. Rebbe, you should have a long beard, a Bekisher Streimel, have a Talmud. Vic Snow he's a nephew to the famous Rabbi Yisrael Snow of Chaim Berlin. Vic says, Rebbe, I'm buying you a cane with a golden top. So I say to him, he says, and I'm buying you a Bekisher. I say, what about a Streimel? He says, you'll get that too. You see, it's a different type of relationship, Kanayin Hara. But Baruch Hashem, it was so joyful for me when your father came in Aliyah after so many years in Chinuch. It was like renewing a friendship. And your father, there was something in his eyes, that twinkle that you could see. This guy is alive and kicking, you understand?
100%.
And it was nachat. And it hurts, the last 2 years your father already couldn't walk, he davened closer to home. Occasionally he would pop into Oel Aron, and it would be like a big simcha for us. You were with them occasionally.
There's no comparison of having old chaverim of nearly 70 years coming together to have a whole world thing. So let me take you back to my father shared a story, which you're probably in the room then. I think it was his first day in the Rav Shir, and he sits down. And he's an undergraduate, but since he had the TELS education, he was able to be into the Rav Smicha Shir. And I think you guys were learning Sanhedrin that year, 1989. I don't know if that was the first year or the second year.
The second year.
It was the second year, the second half. And the Rav called and said, there's a steer in the Rambam. What's a steer? And he pointed to him. And my father described to me that he felt completely petrified, he was hoping that the earth would open up and swallow him up. But fortunately, he gave the right answer, and the Rav said, yeah, correct, and the shir went on.
Okay.
So, but just for people who were not, this is first of all, the Rav mellowed after the late 60s after he lost the triple Avelis. So just walk the people into the world of what it was to be in the shir in 1959.
Okay, so I have to tell you, he mellowed early. I'll explain. And in order to understand what the Rebbe was like, you have to go back to Rabbi Dr. Norman Lamb.
Okay.
Normally learns Hesped of the Rav. And you see, the problem with the Rav was, and by the way, I have a third chapter that's finished already and computerized. I have a Talmidah, Evelyn Weissman Bahar, takes care. She's my editor of my writings. I have wonderful students.
Beautiful.
That, it's one thing to try to do good. It's another that you're appreciated. And I have some students that are just unbelievable in understanding my soul, my neshama. So the third chapter, and I have 9 books published. Some have gone through 4 editions. The OU has published 3 of them, and others. The Rav has gone through 6 printings already. The best I've ever written is the third chapter on the Rav and Dr. Belkin. It is the best of anything I've ever written.
Wow.
If you're interested, you have to be interested. I can tell you very simply, Dr. Belkin enabled the Rav to become the Rav. And the Rav, on the other hand, was always there through all the years when Belkin needed him. Until 70, when the whole machlekes over the university status, and I write everything. Everything is there. All the sources, scholarly, so you see, and I quote Rabbi Aaron Lichtenstein, I find, because if I say something, big deal, Rakeffet said, I have Aaron Lichtenstein, word by word, what I think, wow. Favaf in the sources, but you got to find them. The Eibishter leads you. So the Rav had one chisara, and he never studied in yeshiva. You know that.
Yeah. I don't know. Was it chasar? He learned with his father and his grandfather.
I learned with his grandfather, not really.
You didn't learn just a little bit of the
very, very slightly.
But he quotes him all the time, but he...
No, from his father. He met his grandfather a number of times. He heard over. But the Rav, it was Rezain and Chaslovich. He was with his father. He never learned in a yeshiva.
Okay.
So when he came into YU, there was a lot of machlokes in Boston with the kasher. I write about this.
Right. You wrote it very in your 2 volumes.
Right. It's on the documentary on the Rav, The Lonely Man of Faith. And students can be very skeptical, sarcastic, cynical.
Especially he had the brightest ones. He had the brightest students.
He had to establish himself. And unfortunately or fortunately, Zorak Mora B'Talmidim, which again is in Chazal.
Yeah.
One of the most fabulous stories, and this actually happened, was in 42, right when he began in May 41, might have been 41, 42. He gets, a student says Hasvara, Nalsus given in Yiddish, and he says to this student, Du redst wie a shikering Turk. You speak like a drunken Turk.
Wow.
And the whole class breaks into laughter. And the Rav jumped up. What are they laughing? He says, they say, Rebbe is a Turk.
Oh,
it was Rabbi Solomon Maimon.
From Seattle.
Exactly.
Right.
And I told this story in front of Rabbi Maimon. He wanted to stop. How do you know this?
Wow.
I said, Rabbi Maimon, when I entered the yeshiva, 8-9 years later, people were still talking about this. and he says to him, he looks at Maimon, who's the Gabarin? And he tells him, where he's from.
The Turkish Jew.
And what.
Jew. Right.
And the Rav was, but that story is also interesting. Any Sephardic young man who wanted to learn Torah had to get up learn in Yiddish. You follow me?
Yeah.
Katzin, the chief rabbi of the Sephardic community, his son sat next to me in the Rav Shir.
And he's learning Yiddish.
And he had verstanden the Rav. Ich had verstanden the Rav. So this continued. It was part of his personality. And unfortunately, and Rabbi Lamb makes the point, and others in the eulogy, there was a certain veil around the Rav that you stood in awe. You didn't embrace him. There wasn't the love that you should have shown to him.
More Moshe, less Aaron.
Exactly. By the way, they say the Rav was like this, like Reb Moshe. They say Reb Aaron Soloveitchik was like his mother, Rebbetzin Pesha. It's interesting. Now, what happened, and I actually, I don't know if you're aware of the letter that I wrote, I put into the first volume of the Rav, Rabbi Lichtenstein called that letter the most important letter my father ever wrote. If I'd be a Lubavitcher, I would publish a whole book analyzing every line in the letter and giving you the sources. But see, I wrote to the Rebbe, it was a little later. My letter to the Rebbe that he responded to overflowed with love and appreciation. Reread what the Rebbe wrote to me. Not all my students understand me and know how to appreciate me, etc. So that way, now, what happened, unfortunately, is life. And the Rebbe took very ill.
You got cancer.
Yeah, it was a very.
What year was that?
This is 59-60.
Oh,
it was a very serious operation. Not the survival percentage was not what it is today. And the Rebbe survived, Baruch Hashem. Already by 60, 61, he started to mellow. After the triple tragedy year in 67, he was a Zayda. He wasn't the Rav. And this you can pick up in the documentary where Aaron Adler says, I walked out of the shir with Chaim, and I got his son, my classmate, Chaim Soloveitchik, and I got to give Chaim credit. Chaim was here, well-adjusted, PhD, Hebrew U, top Talmud of Jacob Katz, Rabbi Yaakov Katz, teaching it. He went back to America to take care of his father. Be aware of that. I mean, Torah also deserves all the credit in the world, but also Chaim, he slept with his father in the apartment, in the dormitory. So Aaron Adler quotes Chaim. They're walking out of shir, and Chaim says to Aaron Adler, since when does my father tolerate such nonsense? You know, your kid said a svara, and now I come back to when I was the Reb's Talmud. So I have big shliyot in life. One of them is...
Didn't you write in one of your books that he had in his book, in his great book, Yada?
Yeah. No, I wrote about...
So what year was that? That's in the same time.
That's 57.
Wow.
I'll come back to that in a second. But one time in Ishian Sanhedrin, I said a svara, and the Rav jumped on me, what are you, a reformed rabbi? And the whole class is laughing. And a Talmud of mine who later worked full-time for us in translating the tapes, the reels, into a computer program. Erwin Shapiro, Zeichat Tzadik Levach, used to call this Talmud, Aaron, your greatest find. And I'm still, just this morning, we were in touch again. We're in touch almost daily.
Wow.
We're talking. He picked me up when he bought tapes that Nordlich was selling without my knowledge of my shirim and response to literature. He was interested in response to literature. It's an unbelievable story.
Wow.
So he sent me that part of the tape, and then later in the shir, a few 20 minutes later, the Rav, no, maybe it's that something clings
there, right?
So I played it in class to the kollel. I said, gentlemen, I am so proud. I said, don't you understand? If the Rav thought enough of me to put me down, it's the greatest compliment you can get.
Right.
Now, what you're talking about is what I wrote about, which is very indicative of what we just spoke about 10 minutes ago. When the Rav, we petitioned the yeshiva, we want a college shir. We were chutzpanim. I write this in Washington. Right. I mean, I have to be honest. We were chutz. Who the hell are you?
Right.
But no, we know everything. We want the Rav as a Rebbe. When we put pressure on, we had a miracle. The Rav agreed. I imagine if Shmuel Belkin was involved, Mr. Abrams, the Rav agreed. And we were a very bright class. Barry Liebman's, who used to sit in the class because he was older, he's 2 years ahead of us. Barry said to me many times, he said, you don't realize what the Rav faced when he had to look at your class. And you make a list of who was there, but Brandspiegel, Jerry Blau, Izzy Rifkin, Moshe Yagid, Heshi Shachter, Steve Riskin, Saul Berman, Naftali Friedman, you go on and on. These were very bright kids. And the Rav later, if you read the end of volume 2 of our work, the Rav says it. Whatever I know because of you. I was afraid to come in and funfa. I had to be well prepared.
Right.
So the Rav didn't know what he's getting into when he was college kids. We looked young as could be. I was very young when I entered the Rav Shir. I was 17, 18, let's say. Young.
So what year? So I'm confused. So one hand he's giving the smicha level.
He was giving two shirim at the time.
Two shirim.
Two
wow.
shirim. This was an addition. So
what time was each one of the day during the day? So he
our shir for Tuesday. He'd get off the plane. We would be like 1 o'clock. The other should be 3 o'clock. The other one was 10 o'clock in the morning. Wednesday, 12 o'clock. It was there. So he wanted to scare us. So he pulled the shtick that Tuesday, Wednesday, he asked, was habe ich gesagt nächte? No, it's verstanden? Sag Gibbe, called. And if you knew, he wrote Yoda.
Wow.
If you didn't know, Lo Yoda. But if you raised your hand and said you knew and you didn't, he wrote Shakran. So we were going crazy. And Jerry Blitzstein, I didn't mention Jerry Blitzstein was sitting there. Another Zeichet Tzadik Levracha. Jerry was the Mabitz Hanenikel, his grandfather's Rav Tamashov, Moshe Binyamin Tamashov, Talmud Mufak of Rabbi Salman. So Jerry said, we should talk with the Rebbitzin. So we went into the Rebbitzin. And we told her, we said, Rebbitzin, we're trying hard, we're sincere, but we're going to get ulcers. Shakran? All right, I'll handle it. We went out. The next week, the Rav comes in. I'm telling you as it happened. The next week, the Rav comes in, and we're sitting there, all of us with our heads down. What did the Rebbitzin do there? What's going to happen? And the Rav takes attendance, calls the names, finishes the attendance, and we're all like this, our heads down, and the Rav, you're a bunch of crybabies. And the shir began. He never pulled that shtick again. So you see, the Rebbitzin, she was the mother image that could bridge the gap between us. I have to tell you, in retrospect, maybe I was fortunate that the Rav beat us up. I saw Rebbe the last time I made an appointment, 1983. I was very active with Russian Jewry, and I had to be in America for certain reasons, maybe 3 times, 4 times a year. Some of it involved work with the Mossad, and some of it involved fundraising for Shvat Ami. So I remember in 83, I made an appointment. I said, Rebbe, I'm going to come to Shir, and I'll come back to your apartment with you. And there are about 120 people in the shir. I could swear only about 15 to 20 sitting in front of him knew what was going on. I asked later, I said, what's going on here? He said, well, a lot of guys, when they got with their girlfriends and say they're in the Rav Shir, it sounds very impressive. But they don't. One admitted to me, he used to go to Boston to the Sun Shir, they hab nicht verstanden what he said. I didn't understand. But I could boast everyone. I was up in Boston during the summer. I think he was learning Masachet Kritut, Mashahu Kazeh. So, I saw the Rav, how they honored me. I didn't realize that he couldn't walk without being held up on both sides. I mean, today I'm at that stage that Talmud waits for me because I have to climb up from Rav Berlin to Chalap. He holds on to my hand as I climb the steps. The legs are gone already, meniscus. What can you do? So they honored me to hold on to him, and I could see his whole demeanor. It was a Zaidi dealing with grandchildren and great-grandchildren. It wasn't the hail, fire, and brimstone. Right. And I have to tell you, his mind was good that day. I spoke with him a lot that I asked him. I later wrote it up, very important questions. I published the whole article on Kedoshim, the martyrs of the 6 million Jews. Are they Kedoshim? Why are they Kedoshim? They had no choice.
Right.
Kedoshim to you. When you have a choice, either convert or we'll kill you.
Right.
Here, no one what Hitler killed Jews that were 1/4 Jewish too.
Right.
You follow? And we spoke, and I can tell you something even funnier. the Avodat HaMelech, that was the Rav's uncle, Rabbi Menachem Karakovsky, he was a very unique Voloshin graduate. He was not like the run-of-the-mill, and he had an academic feeling for texts. And the Rav was in Berlin, where you had the big libraries, and he would call upon the Rav to look at the manuscripts of the Rambam and the Nosei Kalim. So the Avodas HaMelech is on the first part of the Rambam. He died in 1929, 1930. The rest of the manuscript was lost in World War II. Lo Aleinu. Karakovsky, it's a well-known name. His granddaughter taught at Stern College, French. You come up occasionally in Israel. They're all related to Reb Menachem, to the Avodat HaMelech. So I said to Rebbe, your uncle, we were talking about Kitvei Yad. Your uncle quotes you 4 times. Nini, Ben Achoti, what Ben? How would it work? Ben Gisi, Hagon Hatzair, Yashabeh. He said, no, not 4, 6 times. So when I got back to Israel and the Kola, I had a student then, maybe one of the brightest young men I ever taught. And like most Gaonim, he was a little bit off the wall, Gaon, she Gaon, very little different. Yosef Tzvi Klausner, Zeichet Tzadik Levracha, died young, never married, no children. At the Shloshim, I was in America when he died, but at the Shloshim I eulogized him. It was a moment in time, that eulogy, and who was there, Reb Nosson Kamenetsky, Reb Chaim Waxman. It was a whole YU reunion. Reb Nosson was Reb David Lifshitz's son-in-law, so we had a deep connection. Nebuch, from the Atmas Nefesh of what he suffered with making of a gadol, he died young. So Rav Yosef C. Klausner, I turned to him, I say, Klaus, I have an assignment for you. I found 4 times on Avodat HaMelech. The Rav told me 6 times. Will you check it out? He comes back a week later. Rebbe, you're wrong, and the Rav is wrong. 8 times he quoted him, and he had place by place by place where he quoted him. But this was the Rav, and this is a human being. When I look back now, I used to teach. You wouldn't believe it. The morning Michlala, the afternoon BMT, the morning Machon Gold, afternoon BMT, Tuesday afternoon the Kolel, the morning could have been Michlala. Right. Where did I get that energy? Right. You're young. Yeah. Today I give 2 Shayurim in the Kolel. Right. They carry me out at the end of each year. You understand? Yes. 2 hours out the Rebbe. Can you stand up? But that's life. On the other hand, Ani Modela Kadosh Baruch Hu, that at my age you can interview me and I'm alive and kicking. Yeah, Baruch Hashem. And my memory is with me.
So my father shared, so he left. So when he told the Rav that he's going to, of all places, Hebron Yeshiva, so the Rav says, "Why are you going?" So what's wrong with my shir? Right. He's very direct. So the reality was, my father was not having haslacha in the New York area, finding a shidduch. He wanted to go to Eretz Yisrael. Hopefully he'll have Mishana Makam, Mishana Mazel. And the truth is that the Rav was a better Maggid shir that he was going to find in Israel. But he said to me that when he went, so he left the Rav like in 1963. And then he went back to New York, like in a similar time, like in the early 80s. And he just saw him. He left the yeshiva crying. Well, because the contrast of what he saw before of the powerful Maggid shir, just complete mastery, just this intellectual titan, and then this quiet little, as you said, Zaidi, old man. It was just so tragic, so difficult.
Yes, that was exactly my feeling. The contrast between the 80s. Going back to the 50s. But the Rav's attitude towards Israel, it comes up time and again.
Yes, it does.
He never felt that the Israeli yeshiva were on a higher level than we had in YU.
It's true.
He once boasted, I have this I quoted him in, must be the 2nd volume of my work, that My Talmidim here, some of them would have been the top Talmidim in Volozhin.
Wow.
You follow?
Wow.
He quoted, he could, and there was a lot of truth to it. The Rav was the Rav unique. Of course, I have to say, today, it's a different story. What Rabbi Aaron Lichtenstein accomplished here, there's a whole revolution of Torah, of the Rav's Torah, of people anxious and thirsty for the Rav's Torah. It's a different ballpark today. I don't know if, again, everyone says, what would the Rav say? We're guessing.
Right.
But I think he would be highly impressed. Coming back to Danny, he went to Hebron, wound up in Itri.
Yeah.
Itri then was a tremendous attraction. Reb Mordechai Elephant, I have to tell you, in Lakewood, when I was being on it, his name, I'm related to him today. I have a fifth great-grandchild on the way who's their great nephews and nieces to his sister. He had no children, and his brother had no children. I don't know if you're aware of this. His sister had a big family, and part of that family is right here in Israel. She was here, and my grandson, my eldest, let me get it right. It's my eldest grandson is married to her great niece at Tzaddikin. Wow. But a side show that Danny would love is I met his sister. She's not alive anymore. It was many years ago. It's my eldest grandson. Their children already bar mitzvah. I have great children bar mitzvah. So she had bakleksik that her descendants are Mizrahiites. And I said to her, you should get down on your knees and thank the Ribbono Shel Olam. You have the greatest descendants in the world. Eretz Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Al Pi Torah Yisrael. Don't know if she agreed with me, but she got the message. Now, Itri at that time, Reb Mordechai Elephant learned in Lakewood, spoke about. So in Lakewood, we had a whole debate with Aaron Cutler and the other big shots. Was he half Talmud Chacham, half gangster? They 60% gangster, 20. They held he was 90% gangster, 10%. But he owned Israel. He got into trouble. He was involved with gun running and Libya and Gaddafi. Character,
right? Character. He had a tremendous covenant Torah. His kollel paid the best. He raised money for other yeshivas.
Right. No. There's no question.
Right. But he has a character. But he has all kind of character.
But I have to tell you, believe it or not, he recorded a whole recording that's available on YouTube where you hear all his stories. It's an amazing recording, and it's and it went public. He let it go. So he's proud that in my book on the Rav, there's a picture of the Sheva Brachas of the Natzen Kamenetsky. The Rav is speaking, Natzen Kamenetsky, Shulamit Lifshitz from David's daughter, and who's leaning forward to hear the Rav? Mordechai Elephant.
Interesting.
And he says, see, I'm identified. And they say, so it shows you what remains of a person, that it makes him happy. There's a picture and he's identified.
With the Rav.
And take a look where I wound up related, and those great-grandchildren were just at my house Erev Shabbos on Friday with my grandson, and I Kanaim Hara. All right, I'll end off with one story, which maybe I told Danny, maybe I didn't.
Yeah, tell it.
But here, whose picture do you see on the wall? You see Bernard Revel.
Yes.
And there's a whole description there. When my book on Bernard Revel came out the fourth time, there was a book launch on the Revel and Silver book were republished the fourth time by the OU. And they made the reception in my honor and honored me, Bernard Revel. A beautiful inscription, and they gave me that picture to Baruch Hashem. So I want you to know my whole doctorate on Bernard Revel is a farce.
Okay, why?
Why? I found out 40 years after I did it, walking through Geula, and I picked up a sefer, a memoir of Kovna. I wrote about my own cousin. And this is unbelievable, because my parents were born in Harlem. And my mother once would talk about her parents that came from Kovna and a frum, so tzaddikim. What happened to them in America, don't ask. My mother was one of 6 children, the only one that has Jewish descendants today,
Wow.
1 out of 6.
Wow.
So my mother would always speak of a Kalvarisky, that her mother was a Kalvarisky and the grandfather wouldn't build a church. He was an architect, not a church, a tzaddik. I put him back and I forgot about it. I pick up the book on Kovna and Animadaf Deif. I flip the pages. I take a look. There's Revel's picture. I buy a book immediately. I start reading and I go crazy. Kalvarisky. My mother was then in a senior citizens facility in the same building where BMT began, a Bobanel 24. So I go and ask my mother, is this the family? She said, yeah, that's my family. So I call my Talmud, Professor Stamford, Hebrew U, who's done some great research on Volozhin, Eastern Europe. I called him, I said, Shol, do you know the author, Yitzchak Elchanan Gibraltar? He says, yeah, he's a Kovna, he's a Litvisher, he's still alive, he's in his, call him, talk with him. I call him, you know, my whole family, and he turns out we're all Kalvariskis on our mother's side, so the name doesn't count. The Rosh Hashiva of Hebron is my cousin.
Wow.
Rav Kohen, Rav David Kohen, we're all Kalvariskis. So take a look. I wrote my doctorate on my own cousin. But I always tell my Talmidim, don't worry, if they take away the doctorate, I'll submit the Silver Era.
Oh, good.
And the Silver Era, I know for sure I'm not related, but Baruch Hashem, it's the one book in the world that is accepted in Haredi circles and YU circles. I don't know if you're aware that the Rabbi Perlau, the president of Agudat Yisrael, he succeeded Moshe Sherrod, the Novominsker Rebbe.
Right.
So there was a whole crowd around him. And I was told the story 100 times over by 100 different people. And someone was writing on America, and the Novominsker said to him, look into Rabbi Rakeffet's work on Silva. So he says, well, but that's a YU. And I don't repeat his words. He happens to know me. We know each other from the 60s. He taught in Hirsch. I taught in YU. We were in the same Washington Heights deal. And he said, that's YU. Big Talmud Chacham, a tzaddik. His work is the single best volume on the history of Torah in America. If you don't quote that, you're not accurate. I said to him, this is Bifnei Yam V'Eda.
Wow.
You have no idea how many copies of Silva have sold in the Haredi world.
Wow.
So I'll submit Silva. I hope on that they'll keep me with a doctorate.
Let me finish up with a question, because my father's longtime chavruta Menachem Nussbaum, which I think you call it, who was also, he never went to YU, but he came to what exactly, he was in the Rav Shir, he visited, he audited, what was the particular thing?
Menachem Nussbaum and I, when my mother switched me from, I might as well tell you the whole story, because this is history, living history.
Yeah.
I was a kid in public school. My home was kosher, the only one out of 6. My father's parents were never Mechalel Shabbos in America. They knew very little. From 100%. My grandmother died young of aggravation, what happened with her children in America. My mother and father took her in. My mother was so chad l'arichet yom ha'mam, and I began my hesped, that, you know, why my mother reached such a golden age. She was active well into her late 90s.
Wow.
I said the kibbut aviyim she gave to her father-in-law was not easy, because he was a baker. He worked at night for Pechters. Du gedenkst Pechters, Pechters and Stummes, they were the only kosher bakeries. Father worked for Pechters, grandfather. And he lived with us. And my mother had Jewish feeling, which I can't explain how, but out of 6 children. So I go to public school, I go to Cheder already, 1st grade. The teacher's always sending for my mother. I'm wild. And the teacher said, what a skut this teacher has. A Jewish lady, I have no idea what if she knew anything about Frumkeit. She says to her, look, this class is mainly Italian and Irish Catholic kids. Your son has a Jewish head. What he learns in a half hour takes them a week. He's bored stiff. But I know 5 blocks from your house, there is an elementary day school, the only one in all of the Bronx, which had 700,000 Jews. It was Yeshiva Rabbeinu Yisrael Salanta, which had moved in from Harlem to Washington Avenue and then to Webster Avenue. Send him to the parochial school. It'll have a dual curriculum. And my mother switched me. Money was a factor. My father was a postman. Money was limited. My mother went to Torah Messiah and they agreed $5 a month tuition. Okay, well, it was something, right. But look what they got out of that $5 a month. Now, when I come to Salanta, Monty Nussbaum opens the door for me and embraces me. He was 1 year ahead of me.
Wow.
So he taught me all the ropes. When he graduated, he was president of student council. When I graduated, I was president of student council. Now, he didn't go to MTA or Yeshiva College, but he remained part of the Chabura. He certainly showed up in YU, the Yortzeit Drasha, the Tshuva Drasha later in life. He knew what was going on. And what happened was when we came in Aliyah, so from the day I arrived in Israel, I knew Hebrew from Bnei Akiva. I knew how to read Hebrew well because I already subscribed to an Israeli newspaper, Panim B'Panim. If you've heard of Ayin B'Ayin, they were, Pinchas Peli.
Pinchas Peli, who wrote the Al Tshuva.
Right. This was his baby.
Okay.
So I knew how to read, but I can't say like today when people ask me, can you speak Hebrew? I speak Hebrew like I speak English. I read Hebrew better than English.
Right.
I don't write Hebrew as well as English. It's an interesting story, which I'm sure is true about a lot of people.
Right.
I have grandchildren who speak perfect English. It doesn't mean they read English the same. There's some who do, some who don't. So you come in Aliyah and you want to integrate. I started reading Mariv every Friday. Every Friday. And there I see a picture, a guy with a beard, with a mask over his eyes. Rotzim ladat anglit, mihu hamolech hachi tov. It was Monty Nussbaum. He was already living in Bnei Brak. He made a living out of teaching Hebrew for adults.
Wow.
And then he moves from Bnei Brak to Yerushalayim. I walk into Old Rivka. Shabbos morning, the 6:30 minyan.
6:30 minyan.
I take a look. Who's sitting there? I say, Monty, what are you doing here? And we have davened together in Old Rivka 54 years.
Wow.
Understand? Now, more than that, when he got involved with the Rav and putting together
he had a tremendous love. How do you explain this? Where did the love come from?
For the Rav?
Yeah.
I think living in Israel, and he's another, if you want to talk with him about the Haredi world, you're going to see.
Yeah, because he and my father they were Chavrusas. They both agreed on that 100%.
Right, exactly. I think the appreciation of the Rav is the result of seeing some of our difficulties here.
Right.
You understand?
So he would go to the Rav shiurs, like the public shiurim. He would sit in. So
he might have gone to Maria as well.
Right,
I mean,
Maria,
there was a lot of access to the Rav beyond the Shia.
Right.
And the truth wasn't that the Rav in the public shiur, let's say Maria, was much more at ease. These were not students he had to hit over the head.
Right.
Although at times, if you listen to the recordings, you can die with laughter. Like there's one time in Maria, because every week he would give Divrei Haggadah at the end on the Sedra.
Right.
So at one time, the Rav says that nicht sein doch Hasidisch wie es gewesen in die alte Heim, das ist a bluff. And one guy shoots at him, nein, das ist nicht richtig, es wird sein, es ist der Rebbeim. And the Rav says, Aye Kinder, Avu Lerensei, bei mir in der Hasidische Stub, no?
Right.
And he let the guy have it.
Right.
Then there's another time you can hear the rub. It's before Yom Kippur. And then he starts laughing. He said, "Oh, du sagst, bei euch ist da der Mikve, darf man gehen in Mikve, man hat da sehr viele Sachen, man hat nicht Zeit zu lernen. Bei uns ist nicht da Mikve, wir haben Zeit zu lernen." I found out that in Bristol they didn't go to Mikve. I never, she said, Mikve to them has to be a halachic concept.
Right.
When a man goes, it's Kabbalistic, but it's not halacha.
Basis. Right.
Right. And he's laughing. You could see a sense of humor second to none.
Right.
And that was the Rav. And look, he was a complex person. And you got to understand what he went through in life. I know how I became a different person coming in Aliyah. People say, why did you change your name? I'm not Rothkopf anymore. I'm Rakeffet.
Right.
It's a big difference. Later in life, I had to become half Rothkopf, half Rakeffet. That you don't understand. It's very simple. When the Mossad sought me out, why did they seek me out?
Yeah.
They got a request from the Siruvnikim, someone to teach Gemara in communist Russia. They had become Balei Tshuva, they were in Siruv, wanted Gemara. Who do you send to Russia? This was Aryeh Kroll, Zeichel Tzadik Levarcha, got Pras Yisrael. He came up with the idea that people like Rakeffet are Chatzi Yevet, Chatzi Ben Chorin. Down him. I can tell you the Yankees won last night. Did you know that?
No, I did not know that.
The Judge hit another home run.
No, the Judge, Aaron Judge.
Baron Ashofei. You see the smile on my face.
That's it.
So this became very important. And it plays a big role. For 10 years, my wife and I led a dual existence. No one knew this. We worked normal and worked for the Mossad. Times we were gone, everyone thought it was the army would cover for me. I was in Russia. We were in Russia.
Wow.
But the army would cover. I was in the army 15 years. Lecture. I saw the whole world. I was in Lebanon. I was in the Damascus Road for weeks lecturing 82. I have a war ribbon. What are you talking about?
Wow.
I was down in Egypt, in Africa, before we gave it back like fools. I gave Shayurim. What are you talking about? It was all over. So, but you see the Rothkopf element becomes important later. And then go to the Rav. Pluzhan, Razin, Chaslovich, Warsaw, Berlin, Boston, New York. Look at all the adjustments he had to make. And then you can understand why he never recovered from his wife's death. You see, there's some people marry, all right, it's a nice relationship. But there's some people without their... there's some people, it's an intermingling of two personalities. And it's not just the Rav. You take the Lubavitcher Rebbe.
Right.
You see that? If you knew Reb Moshe's, Rebbetzin would answer the telephone, Moshe, there's such a relationship between them. Such kavod hadadi. Not everyone is zeicha. You take Rabbi Chiel Yaakov Weinberg. I know more than I will say in public because one of his Talmidim Uvhakim, we davened together till the Ezriel Hildesheimer. Ask Monty Nussbaum. This before Danny came in Aliyah. He was one of the big people in Old Rivka.
He's a master of the Mishnah.
That's a cousin.
What's his name? That was also another guy, professor of Mishnah. What's his name?
You're talking about
also over here.
Slotnick.
Yeah.
Dov Zlotnick.
Yeah, Dov Zlotnick.
That was the minion.
Right.
Hildesheimer, Zlotnick, etc. So I'll tell you something interesting. Hildesheimer was a rough guy. He's a Yekka, PhD. And he treated me with kid gloves. And people would ask me, well, what do you have?
Right. Why so nice to you?
You're so nice. I said, let me tell you, you don't know how nice he is to me. He doesn't know what to do for me. Why? Rabbi Revel was his wife's uncle. And all that remains of Rabbi Revel is my doctorate.
Hmm.
You follow? His children never married.
Oh, I didn't know
There are
that.
no grandchildren. You don't know what a price Rabbi Revel paid. And his wife, Chayasara, Travis, her brother, son, married Ezriel Hildesheimer.
Oh, wow.
And I'll tell you even better, I never would do this with anyone else. One time he came to me, he said, the family asked me, how do you know that Rabbi Revel was in the oil business? We think he was just in New York. I said, Ezriel, ani avi lecha hamismachim ma sheni lo aseh l'shum adam. And I brought him, I had to throw it out years later, it just fell apart. It was carbon copies on yellow paper from 110 years ago of correspondence between Tulsa and New York. And he looked at it and he didn't know what to do for me.
Wow.
And he said, Ani ashtikol tam, I'll shut them up. He said, I'm going to let them know. He didn't know what to do for me. This was Israel, but Dov Zlotnik, you mentioned Dov Zlotnik. Dov Zlotnik was a Yid, a tzaddik. And he taught at the seminary. He was a Talmud of Reb Shol Lieberman. And he gave a talk on Tarat Mishpacha at the seminary. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe called him to 770 and gave him the biggest Yashakayach in the world.
Wow.
And he said, then when the seminary started hacking away with
women
ordination, God have mercy, what happened? Because at one time was a halachic, at least they made some sort of attempt. Finkelstein, Lieberman, Heschel. So he went to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, should I leave? The Rebbe said no. This Dov told me, Kolzman Liebman is dort, du bleibst splitten. You don't leave your Rebbe, you'll fight together with him. Later, when they ordained women, so that's when Zlotnik left, Halevny Weiss left, Faur left, the Zimitrovsky left. 3 of them at least came back to Israel, and those Zlotnik, Yid at Tzaddik.
Raised
raised wonderful, wonderful children. Yedarim, Yesharim, Yevurach. And Kanain Hara, life moves on. And this is why, let me, once again, I'm upset with your family. Who's living in Israel? We need you here. And if you can't leave now in the middle of life, your children.
My son has made Aliyah.
Oh, that's it.
And my granddaughter is an Israeli.
So if your son has made Aliyah, kanito אותי. אתה מכיר את הביטוי הזה? עברית מדוברת, לשון שוקית, slang. You understand? In Hebrew, no one uses lashon shukit, they use slang. That's the story when I started reading Mariv. So one time I get stuck with a word in the headline, and I go to my neighbor, this will be 69, 70, I go to my neighbor, I say, Maha milah hazot. I look at him. Golda mevakeshet credit. Should be Golda mevakeshet ashrai.
Credit.
Same thing in the army. The word tased se fix. I said to my commander, "Mazeh fix, 100% tov." I said, "Lama tov, b'hashlama, but mazeh fix, b'atzot habrit, fix, tov, l'takein mashu." No, zot hamitzorah shalanu b'tzava. Tased ze fix. All right, these are some of the stories.
So look, so unfortunately, Menachem, aka Monty Nussbaum, and he said to his wife that he learned with a bunch of guys in Har Nof, who had a chabura learning studying Rabbi Aaron Soloveitchik's thinking, but he says, I learned there's no Torah like Danny Rosenthal's Torah, and they basically spent 22 years learning all the works of the Rav.
No, they had a terrific chavruta, and there's no
problem. And truth is, once my father died, the thing that aided and abetted his demise, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, he went downhill at the end. But it was sudden. In other words, Shabbos Chol Hamoed, Pesach, he was in shul.
Wow.
and as normal as could be. In
Right,
other words,
right.
there's no hint. Shvi Shel Pesach, he was not.
Right.
But I figured they went away for Shvi.
Right.
And then I got the call 2 days later.
Right.
It's,
Unbelievable. Very difficult. Very difficult.
uh,
And look, he is so he at the shiva. Menachem says my father gave him the best compliment. My father, the last Shabbos, went to Ol Rivka, because Menachem was giving over a drasha between Mincha and Ma'ariv, and he shared over Divrei Torah of the Rav. And he went and he says, at that point, he said, you sounded like the Rav. And so they said, so that was the compliment of compliments for Menachem. And the truth is, we're here really commemorating all the sort of the Talmidim of the Rav.
No, it's an era that is ending, and that's the nature of life. And we have to live with it. I can tell you with Reb Shmuel Belkin, I have students here from the Kollel who told me, Rabbi Belkin, he was an Amoritz. What did he know? And it's beyond words. That's life moves on. And this is why I'm writing. I have to tell you, my students know this. I've bothered Bernard Rover Graduate School 20 years, assign a doctorate on the Rav.
That's a very intimidating.
Assign a doctorate. Stand on my shoulders. I stood on Clapperman's shoulders. He wrote on early YU. I wrote on Revel. Sign on the Rav. Nothing was done. Why, I don't know. Wise guys said to me, this is a true story, said to me maybe 2 years ago, you're the problem. I'm the problem. Your work on Revel was too good. No, you know what I responded on the spot? You're an Amoritz. It's an open Gemara in Rosh Hashanah. Yiftach b'dorah k'shmul b'dorah.
That's it.
You need a work. All right, so you give me a 10, you'll give that work an 8.
Right.
But you have to have something. The man. Finally,
you don't feel your 2 volumes on the Rav is as far as from the biography is sufficiently
not about Belkin.
Oh, Belkin.
Not about Belkin.
So you would see that in order to chapter on Belkin should be
on my biography on the Rav. I have to say, no one has the book of these volumes out 25 years. No one has found a mistake.
Right.
No one.
Right.
The rest of the 2 volumes is, I'm quoting the Rav.
Right.
There are 2 dummies wrote to me, I have mistakes. I wrote back, gentlemen, you're not correcting me. I'm quoting the Rav. You're correcting the Rav. I said, I can't cite this correcting the Rav. But I want to tell you, with Belkin, I finally picked up Nachum Shreya Zayatz. He was willing to go to Bernard Revel, get a doctorate, and write on the Rav. A Chabadnik, a very capable Chabadnik. A Chashuva grandfather was a big Rav in Russia, communist Russia. So I worked out a meeting with Bernard Revel Graduate School. Corona came and killed everything. By the time life got back to normal, the old dean was gone, and the new dean is in philosophy. He's a great man, but he's from England. He never knew Dr. Belkin's name.
Right.
So I saw it's hopeless, and I decided to write a subjective memoir.
Okay.
And I write at the introduction that this does not take the place of a scholarly doctorate, but this is my reflections on Reb Shmuel Belkin. And I have to add, I have to be honest, you won't believe this, but something in Belkin's life writings influenced my entire life, meaning he put out a volume in the mid-50s, Essays in Traditional Jewish Thought. One of the essays was a letter to a student. Rav Shmuel Belkin was the most popular Rosh Yeshiva in YU in the 1930s. The students loved him. I have footnotes on it. Every word I'm saying, I can authenticate. He cries in this letter that he's no longer a Rebbe teaching. That letter left a tremendous impact on me. As life moved on, that letter went deeper and deeper into my heart. I was offered so many positions. Chaim Druckmann called me, wanted me to be on his list for the Knesset, a safe position. Chief Rabbi Avram Shapiro had an appointment for me to the chief rabbinate liaison with rabbinical associations across the world. Positions, Rosh Yeshiva, Dean, President, I can't go on. And I could have used the money. The 70s and 80s were not easy years for me. You were on a regular salary. Here you get a car, you have expense account. Oh, it's a little bit different. I turned it all down. One time my wife got a call. I'll never forget the Saturday night. So and we made this offer to him at the Kotel, because I had my own minyan 46 years. I had my own minyan at the Kotel Friday night. Now I can't do that walk. It's 10 years already. I'm limited, but all right, I have where to daven.
That's right.
I have where to daven. You don't even know. I have a son-in-law who runs a shul on Palmach.
Oh, wow.
So Chazon Yecheskel, 30 years he's president. He was a career army man, but the shul until today. So I have there to daven, or Lara and Ohel Rivka, Baruch Hashem. Says, אנחנו לא מבינים את הבעל שלך, מציעים לו דבר, הוא אפילו לא אומר, הוא יחשוב על זה. על המקום הוא מסרב. את יכולה לעזור? So my wife said, look, I know my husband. He won't leave the desk. I remember saying to Chaim Druckmann, אתה יכול, משה צפינריה, גם הצליח, they were all חברי כנסת. אני לא יכול. And Baruch Hashem.
You're right, it's the right decision. There's no fear like giving shir, and it's gonna and makes you creative. And you have to give, if you know you have to give a shir on Sunday and Monday, keeps you young. That's your elixir of life.
You have no idea what's waiting here, and all this is on East European Yeshiva.
Wow.
But this is on Reb Menashe Klein, and it's only 1/5 of all the material I have and have done and given and brought him back to life, because he never gets the credit he deserves. Reb Menashe Klein, because he was a character.
Yes, he was.
He was a character, and you got to see the depth of the man, a Munkacher from that area, and he corresponds with everyone. YU, Lakewood, Satmar, Lubavitch, Israel, America. Isn't the shaila he doesn't take. I can tell you, Reb Moshe, they censored questions later, and I wrote.
Do you think those last volumes, the 7 and 8? What do you think
they're not?
They seem some of them seem like not him.
Right, they're not as reliable as the first 5, 6.
Who's the? Is it Rabbi Moshe?
It's his Rabbi Tendler's son, Mordechai Tendler.
Mordechai Tendler basically wrote.
Mordechai Tendler has great schuyot. He took care of Rabbi Moshe in his old age. On the other hand, you don't know.
How much is it Mordechai Tendler and how much is it Rabbi?
No, I would imagine it's more Rabbi Moshe than Mordechai Tendler, but the question is, how do you balance it out? Like the Mishnayot, the women, and doesn't seem like Rabbi Moshe would paskin that way, la halacha. On the other hand, Mesoret Moshe, both Rav Ruvain and Rav David and Moshe David Tendler, all three signed on that this is an accurate volume. And the truth is that volume saves me. You don't know. I have a Talmud, Rabbi Moshe Wiener, who's published thousands of pages why you must have a beard. And he's argued with me, you don't know that, you never heard what happened. I answered him in class, and he answered me. And then he put it all on Chabad Online with his picture, beard down to here. Chabad, don't touch the beard. The guy that I look like, and he put Atu Shirim there. I never had so much nachat. But what saves me, and I love him, he's very market tovit to me. I'll tell you why in a second. But in Mesoret Moshe, they tell the story. He came to Reb Moshe for Haskama, and Reb Moshe refused. He told him in Slabotkin, everyone shaved. How can I come out and say you must have a beard? I'll tell you, Rabbi Wiener, there are a few Talmidim who are big Chabadnikim, who are when they see me, they hug me, they kiss me. Why? So Weiner was my Talmud in the 60s in YU, and he was unhappy. So every other Rebbe told him, don't be unhappy and play it wonderful. And his parents were survivors. They wanted him to have a high school, college education. I'm the only one who said to him, look, there are other places you can go to, like near Israel, where you can go to Johns Hopkins and your father will be happy and you might find the atmosphere there. But he was always remembered that I encouraged him. He wound up a Chabadnik, big Talmud Chacham. He's in Coney Island. He's the head of the whole community council. Like Chabad, they do terrific work for Jews, for Goyim as well. Another Talmud, White, is a very big lawyer in Chabad. I met him in Los Angeles, then I met him here with his wife. He came to Shah. He didn't know what's the story. I remember well, he was my Talmud in BMT in the 70s.
Wow.
And he corresponded with the Rebbe. He wrote, got answers. Every other faculty member, the Rebbe, what, Hasidus, they laughed at him. I encouraged him. I said, if you find that way of life attractive, go for it. And I encouraged him. And he became a top quality Chabad Chassid. So that's also, it reveals, I can tell you a story with the Rav. I've told my Talmud many times. 77, I came back to America for the first time. What does this mean I came back to America? The government sent me to speak. I already was integrated, did army, etc. So at the RCA convention, and then there were other places, it was all arranged. So I went to see Rebbe. I wrote in advance. I was happy. I'll tell you in a second a good story. And while I'm talking with Rebbe, a prominent rabbi comes over from Chicago. Wow. His kids learn in Lakewood. And the Rebbe says to him, "Afagenigen sereten mit deiner Sohn in lernen, can gut lernen." Now, I knew that this father was hitting his head against the wall, that his kid didn't go to college.
Right.
Here I Ken Larinen, he went on, he's no longer alive. He went on to become Av Beit Din in North Miami Beach.
Wow.
He issued all the gittin for that area. We on a halachic level, we corresponded. I had some documents were helpful to him, etc. But it shows you that the Rav, right, he didn't go to college, he's happy like this. And meeting the Rav again in 77 is very fascinating. Because when I went to say goodbye to the Rav, again, I'm not a chassid. I didn't ask it like Aaron Adler writes. I didn't ask for his permission to go in Aliyah. I told him. So when I went, I told him, he said, how will you make a living?
Kakasha.
Okay. 77, I come back and meet him. The first thing he says to me, oh, I hear wonderful things about you, what you're doing. So I tell him, see, thank God he didn't ask me how I make a living, because I wouldn't have had an answer. I'm not making a living, but at least he heard good things. Right. And that was the Rav.
We hear there's a question somebody asks, is it true, or there always is a question about Rav mythology. Is it true or not true that when the Rav went to college, went to university in Berlin, that his uncle, or Velvel, Soloveitchik, did not speak to him anymore?
I doubt if that's true. I'll tell you why. The Rav raised the floor. I gave money.
He gave money. He raised it, but that shows the godless of the Rav. Even though he didn't mock him, he still gave him money.
No.
So you think that's mythology?
I think that's. When I came in Aliyah, I went to see Rav Velvel's son and son-in-law, and their attitude towards the Rav was unbelievably warm. I don't think that's true. Blood is thicker than mud. And even Mayor Berlin also got great covered.
Despite him going into the...
Right. No. Okay. Blood is thicker than mud.
Despite their shita, even though they felt that that's also...
Zelachud v'zelachud.
Right. Okay, good to know.
I spoke about that in class yesterday, that if you would ask them, how did the Rav do all this and this? I'll say, I can. The average person can't. He could do it and not be influenced.
Right.
This is the old viewpoint. I quoted the Munkacha, something Rabbi Nasha Klein calls, and I found it. I mean, unbelievable.
Which Munkacha, the original one or the current one?
No, the original, the current one. Mandachas Shmei. We're talking the original. Right. Rabbi Loza Shapiro.
Right.
Minchat Loza.
Minchas a loser.
And he curses, the whole question, how can you curse Jews? How can you curse Agudat Yisrael the way he cursed them?
Right.
So I spoke about the arsenic. He gave a whole marshal that there's a tribe that can eat arsenic and not be poisoned, because from the youth on, they ate arsenic. The same thing, they're Jews that are exposed to the big world and go to gymnasium and go to college and university, and they can do it because they've done it since their youth. That's Germany, but chas v'chalila, we should do that in Hungary.
Right.
And Rabbi Aaron says in America too, you find that they could do it. We can't dismiss them. And then I added, Rabbi Aaron didn't see, have a Talmud, a big Gera, big Talmud Chacham, big. He wrote, I have from here that he wrote. And he's from Beit Shemesh today, from France, New York, Lakewood originally, his father. And he gave me a gift, a volume that he didn't need anymore, letters of the third Gera of the Reim, the third Gera Rebbe. And there I found in a letter that there are countries where people wear short clothes, don't wear blong, and trim their beards,
Right.
and they're tzaddikim and kedoshim, tahirim. We have to work hand in hand with them and not dismiss them. We live here, we dress a certain way. They live elsewhere. Maybe from to Germany, America. I found exactly what the Munkacher is alluding to, and exactly what Menashe Klein says, that what the Munkacher says about Hungary would be true today about America. You follow? It's unbelievable. But this is the big problem with what's going to go on now with the draft. You're sitting on a volcano.
Do you think there's is there any movement, or is it because Netanyahu is not going to give up give up his coalition to upset the Haredim?
No. The question is, will he have a coalition?
Right.
It's not simple. This time, bo mayim ad nefesh. The army needs more people.
Right, but now they're coming up with all these psharas and this and that, which are
no. If Gantz leaves, you have a big problem. Will he have a coalition?
Right. And
within the Likud, there's tremendous pressure not to give in this time. And even Smotrich,
right, they're not.
There's tremendous pressure not to give in. Ben Gvir probably can give in because he's ideologically, he's not like I am, where army is all part of Eretz Yisrael, Milchemet Mitzvah.
Right.
And more than that, I keep on yelling, why doesn't anyone, all these advertisements, no one quotes the Gemara Megillah, Daf Gimel Amud Aleph, Halanu ata ala tzarenu. But when you're not learning, you have to fight. When you're fighting, you can't learn, but you have to do both.
Right.
Either learn, fight, whatever's required.
Right.
It's unbelievable. This is common sense. And this is I sold the class Chatam Seifa in Lulav HaGozel, which was published for the first time, I think, in the early 70s, a Kitav Yad. And the Chatam Seifa asked, why do you put on tefillin in Israel? You shouldn't have to put on tefillin. I say from mitzvah patamina, you go to work, yishuv haaretz. So the Chatam Seifa answers, you have to chutziva v'chutziva.
Right.
It's the same thing with the army and learning. There's no concept because you're in the army. You don't learn it because you're learning. You don't serve in the army.
Right.
But on a practical level, what I always tell Danny, we have to inspire them. A Talmidim of mine opened up Hesder programs for Haredim. If 100 will succeed, you'll get 1,000. 1,000 will, but you have to allow it to go naturally. Normally.
No coercion.
You can't, with coercion, you get nowhere. You get a lot further with honey than with vinegar.
Right.
And this is our problem.
But they need the people now. The problem is they can't wait.
But now we have a real problem that the survival is an existential problem. It's not something we can push off indefinitely. I had many children who did Nachal Haredi, and then the stories they would come back with of kids from Panovich homes, Gera homes. These were kids that were running away, were tortured as growing up. Today, it's much more normal. The people serving are much more solid.
Accepted into. Oh, they're more. No, the ones that were coming are not. They're not the rejects of the community.
They're not right. They're much more solid. And just the other day, 30 young Haredi people went into Mishma HaGvul. And you have today, I don't know if you're aware of this, women who are officers in the army, experts in sexual abuse, Harediyot. Of course, they're terrible problems. I don't have to elaborate. And these women, you have to know how to deal with it. You have to know the terminology, the language. And these women are trained. It's a Kiddush Hashem. But you have to let it flow. It would be good if one Rosh Yeshiva would have the guts to come out in public positively. One Hasidic Rebbe, the one who under the covers is positive, is the Belzer.
Belzer, right. He was the one willing to say having a secular education.
Right. No, the Belzer.
Much more realistic.
He's with it here. He knows what's going on, and he has very good. I've met some of his advisors, some of that alive, but very impressive people. They were impressive, they almost fainted. I told my wife stammt from Belzer. Ihr älter seid es gewesen, der Schlich Tzibur for the Sar Shalom. That was the first Belzer Rebbe.
Wow.
And that was my wife's great-great-grandfather. And my wife's grandfather showed me pictures when he said, Zeichet Tzadik Levracha, a Belzer Neinakel. Hey, the works. My kids, I don't know, everyone looks at me like I had tremendous success. All my kids are the same like we are. And my grandchildren, you can't believe they're all religious Zionists, strong. I would be happy if one of my kids would be a Lubavitcher Chassid or one of my grandchildren, but I don't know, they grew up in a good environment, I guess. My wife, I guess I have to give the credit. I have a lot of nachat. I don't want to talk.
Tiftach Pelo Satan.
Right, exactly. I don't want to talk. I have a lot of nachat, and they're good kids. They're very good kids. Kanain Hara.
Right. We'll end on that high note. Thank you so much. It was a very comprehensive journey of Jewish history for the last 70 years, and my father felt very good to be part of with you, and all the chevra of the yeshiva, and with the Rav, and all those fond memories. And it's as he said, I don't know. He said he wouldn't have been from without the Rav. So what's the shot? He didn't say this directly, but we talked about it. He said basically he was getting pushed by two forces. One is that his parents didn't really want him. They were conservative Jews. They're from the Alta Haim. They felt he's going backwards. It's recidivism by becoming thing. That's number one. So he didn't get and he had two brothers. One was from Cornell, one was from and they're asking him kashas, biblical criticism, this and that. Asking him, all the kind of kashas. So the Rav, the stature of the Rav, a person who reflects the Amitas HaTorah and has the true fullness of the Western world, he represented the fact is that Ish Shalem, that you can be this.
Right, no. That's exactly what I tell. We have to set the example for the Haredi world. And here, the machlokes of Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Shimon Yochai doesn't apply. Right. Why? Because mitzvah yeshivaretz means you have to have derech eretz. You have to know how to farm. You have to know how to collect garbage. You have to know how to have an army. You have to have a legal system. You have to have hospitals. All this is yeshivaretz.
That's mitzvah.
This is what I plead with people. If you're a doctor in America, so all right, you have a mitzvah of Gemilut Chesed. Here you have yeshivaretz plus Gemilut Chesed.
That's right.
It's both. All right.
Rabbi Yasher Koach, thanks so much.
Now, one second. This is a very comprehensive